It is live stream time for the third time this Wimbledon fortnight, and boy is it flying by, tons going on, and never does a day pass without an upset. Seeds are falling, continuing to fall, and people are getting upset, and that's what we expect with the slam. So hey, welcome back to the tennis vlog. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you're not subscribed. Don't know why I'm saying that this early on, because if you're here, you're probably subscribed, but if you're not, then please do hit that button. Here I am to answer your third round questions, so please bring them hither and I will get to it and answer them. I know some people sent some in advance, and the smart thing would have been to get them up in advance, so I'm going to search for them now. Yeah, biggest headlines. Kevin Anderson, last year's finalist, out to Guido Pella, who took out the previous year's finalist last year as well, when he took out Marin Cilic. So he's Argentinian. Diego Schwartzman was telling me just last week how the South American players struggle on grass to them because they're doing good stuff. And he's making himself a bit of a grass court force now, Guido Pella, so fair play. So that was Anderson down and out. I'm mixing it up now. I'm at the point, and I'm not even going to pretend. I'm tired. I've got my water. I'm going to keep myself going by drinking water, but I am slightly tired. So if I stumble, if I get a bit stuck, that's probably why. I apologize. And because, partly due to that, but also because people are falling left, right, and centre, and it's difficult to remember what happened where, I am losing track of the rounds, so bear with. Knew that Anderson lost this round. There were some struggles, I guess. Novak Djokovic was pushed to 4 sets. The eventual victory for him was rarely in doubt, but Hubert Hurkacz, difficult guy to play, was in great form on grass, took out the number 32 seed Filip Krajinovic in the first round, took the second set off Djokovic and played 2 of the most outstanding points of the tournament. So Djokovic now has been a bit tested, and that's important for him because it's difficult to say when he's going to get tested again. He has the wide open half of the draw. I mean, even people that were still in his half and seeded highly, like Kevin Anderson, are now falling as well. It's difficult, really, to look in Djokovic's half of the draw and see anyone that's going to trouble him. People were kind of looking to a meeting with Felix Auger-Aliassime, which would have been in the next round, but he got upset in 3 sets by Hugo Humbert, who is doing pretty well, actually. He's a young guy from France, in form, so who knows what might happen there with a lesser-known player. But that's on the men's side. Nadal eased through today against Jo-Wilfried Tsonga, who's on his way back. And Tsonga, you know, that one promised to potentially be a good one. But Tsonga at this point in time is just on his way back from injury and just walking out on that centre court. He had the most massive smile on his face, which was lovely to see. And it was almost, obviously he wanted to win that match, but you could see just the sense of achievement on his face of getting back onto centre court. He missed Wimbledon last year. It's been a very successful tournament for him in the past. And to come through the injuries and difficulties that he's come through to even get back on that stage against a player like Nadal is massive for him. Nadal had definitely been played into form by that Kyrgios match. So yeah, I thought in my head prior to the match, you know, probably going to be straight sets Nadal, but Tsonga has the talent to cause an upset. That didn't happen. So Nadal looking pretty secure. Federer pushed a little bit by Luca Pouille, who had him on the ropes in the first and final sets, but as ever, Federer wins the big points. And good for him, actually, that he's being asked a few questions, because the more this goes on, the stronger Nadal looks, and what's it going to be, potentially, Federer versus Nadal semi-final? And I'm not as afraid to talk about that because they did meet in the semis of the French when I kept thinking that something was going to stop that happening, but nothing did. So that's the kind of the headline stories, I guess, on the men's side of things. Milos Raonic getting going again. Milos, 2 big servers, actually. Milos Raonic and Sam Querrey, both of them have done well at Wimbledon in the past. They even played each other in the semi-finals in 2016. Both of them getting going again. So interesting to keep track of those two. Sam Querrey got a really good straight sets win over John Millman today. Millman digging his forehands deep and doing the 1-2 punch and just keeping Querrey under examination, really. But Querrey really steps up and proved himself there. So I've definitely, since he beat, who did he beat in round 1? Dominic Thiem. Since he beat Thiem in round 1, I've had an eye on Sam Querrey, and I definitely think that he's one to watch. But not in the best half of the draw, because he's in with Federer and Nadal, and in the side of the draw, really, where many of the seeds still remain. Let's have a look at the women's. Get some questions in, guys, or I can't start on answering your questions. Looks like the stream's buffering on my computer. I'm not sure how long that has been the case. But I'm going to carry on. It says that people are watching. Leave a comment to let me know if you can see what's happening, and I'm going to refresh this to see if it kind of resets itself. Women's side, Ashley Barty looking in cruise control at the moment. Very impressive win today. Not the toughest opponent in Harriet Dart, but still got going incredibly well. Serena Williams stepped it up. Looked more like a woman on a mission, I said, than previously, because she was sloppy in her first 2 rounds. But, you know, with the thought of a couple of matches having to be played by her today, stepped it up to win in straights against Julia Gerges. Petra Kvitova still a straight up front contender for me. She's had 3 potentially difficult opponents and smashed her way through them. And more going on, but hopefully if you send in your questions, then we can get cracking on that. Looks like it's playing, so please do drop me a note to make sure that you can actually see and hear what's going on. That would be incredibly helpful. And I'll get started on some of the questions I was sent through in advance. Apologies that I was late, I always am. Here we go. Hello, thank you. Thank you for letting me know that this is working. I don't know why. It's always me, and it's always the Wi-Fi here. I don't know what the issue is, but nothing that I know how to sort out. Right, let's get to these questions from earlier. Okay. Who have been your biggest surprises in the men's and women's singles? I'm not sure if this is surprises in terms of upsets or surprises in terms of who's done well. I think it's probably indicating upsets here. So on the men's side, I'm thinking maybe, and it's way back in the first round now, but I'm thinking, maybe Stefanos Tsitsipas, just because, I mean, I didn't see him going all the way to the title, and he was at Boodles where I was working last week, and even though it was an exhibition event, he wasn't in, like, top elite form, but I did think, you know, he had the focus and the form to go deep into the event, and whereas Alexander Zverev and Dominic Thiem were playing opponents in Uri Vesely and Sam Querrey, who've done well here before, Tsitsipas was up against Thomas Fabiano, who played a lot on the Challenger Tour only a couple of years ago. So I just didn't really see that one coming in the first round. And obviously I give everyone a shot, so I try not to be surprised by anything. But I would say that of the upsets, because it came so early as well, first round, that one probably surprised me the most on the men's side. And then in the women's draw, it's just, it's so tough to be surprised by anything really, just because there are so many contenders and it's so open, but at the same time there is kind of struggles with the mentality and stuff like that. So it is very open at the moment in the women's game. I didn't expect Angelique Kerber to lose to Lauren Davis. I certainly didn't expect her to defend the title, especially after she went deep in Eastbourne last week. I thought, oh, she's not going to be playing deep into tournaments for 3 weeks straight. But I just didn't expect, I mean, looking at her draw, I wouldn't have expected her to go out to Lauren Davis. And if I'd have analysed it a bit more deeply, maybe that would have been more obvious. But, you know, Davis, small player, you wouldn't really put her and Grass together. But actually, I mentioned this in the last video, because of her height and because of her speed, she was actually getting herself in the position where the ball was in her strike zone and playing incredibly well. So maybe I shouldn't have been as surprised by that. But as it happened, it was one of the more surprising results to me, I would say. And I've lost where I am again. It's one of those days. Yeah, do keep sending in your questions. If you don't, then I have tons to talk about, so we're fine. And I'm feeling in quite, because I'm tired, sometimes it means I mean, I say what I think anyway, but it probably means I have less of a filter, so might be a bit more sharp than usual, which is probably entertaining, but not good for me. So where are we at? I can't find the other question. Come on, mate. Where are we at? Down, 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 down. I had it a minute ago. It's one of these things, you just accidentally swipe the page while you're not looking and then it completely disappears. Tell me I'm not the only one this happens to. July 5th. What date is it now? July 6th. Oh, dearie me. Come on, mate. So many replies, and I'll tell you, I'm scrolling to this on Twitter. Someone left some replies on Twitter, but I've had a lot of replies over the past 24 hours because I had what turns out to be quite a controversial opinion on something, which I will talk about. Shouldn't be a controversial opinion, but it's Wimbledon, so all the casual fans are cashing in, which makes things interesting. So, oh, here we go. Who are your most overrated players on both tours? And this person says, for the men, I'll go with Grigor Dimitrov and Taylor Townsend. Ooh, naming names. Deary, deary me. Okay, so I'll start with women's. For me, I mean, she's not really overrated anymore because people have kind of seen through it. But if we were talking a few years ago when she was being hyped to the skies, it would 100% have been Eugenie Bouchard for me. I never saw anything in her game. I mean, she could land a ball in the court and hit it hard, but there were so many players that were doing that better than she was. And I think that's been exposed now because she has been struggling for a number of years. You know, anything could happen if the draws open up for her, but she was seriously overrated. She had some kind draws to go deep at Grand Slams, and because of her marketability and because of some of the wins that she was pulling out, people got on the bandwagon, and it wasn't a good idea. To this day, I say Bouchard was not as good as people made out, and results are proving it at the moment. So on the women's side, I would go with Bouchard. Very overrated, I think. And on the men's side, I mean, the thing with Dimitrov is that he was a really good young player. He did upset Djokovic when he was 21 and unseeded. He has had wins over some of the biggest names in the sport, you know, so he is talented. I don't think anyone's talking him up anymore. I don't think there are people out there saying he's going to be world number one. He's too streaky for that at the moment. So I'm not sure I'd call Dimitrov overrated. He probably hasn't yet fulfilled the potential that people had for him. I know a few years ago people were predicting him to be world number one within the next 3 years, 5 years. But it's a difficult one on the men's side, really, because outside of the big three, the big four, people are cautious about pumping people up because they're big shoes to fill at the top of the game. So I'm really not sure, you know. I mean, Dimitrov is a fair shout at the end of the day, but I have just defended him for those reasons. So, who would it be? I mean, probably one of the... No one jumps to mind, really. I mean, there will be some... You're looking at that middle generation, aren't you? I mean, there are lots of promising next-gen players on the way up right now. Tsitsipas, Zverev, who's kind of out of that age bracket now, but Auger-Aliassime, you know, these players are not overhyped. They're just taking their time to fill their potential. But you had that middle group, Dimitrov, Nishikori, Raonic. And to be fair to them, you know, they've all done decent stuff, especially given that two or three of them have really struggled with injury. Dimitrov hasn't been in a slam final, but he won the ATP finals. The other two have been in slam finals. So it is definitely more hard to say on the men's side because I feel like less men get hyped than women because it's so open on the WTA side. I feel like there is a lot more hype on that side, as we're seeing this week, as opposed to the men's side. So I should have thought about this before, but I'd have to take more time to think actually on that one. Because in my tired state, no one springs to mind. So there you go. I'm going back over to the stream to see what you've been saying. Where are we at? Did you hear what Fabio Fognini said? Do you think he'd get fined again? I'm not sure. I wasn't really watching the Fognini match. I saw something about him complaining about being scheduled on a certain court, which to an extent I get, because he's seeded and he was on an outside court. And yesterday we saw a match between two non-seeders on centre court, which is what I was tweeting about yesterday. But I don't know. What did Fabio Fognini say? If anyone can fill me in, then, because I know he lost in straight sets to Tennis Sandgren. Yes, he did. 6-3, 7-6, 6-3. I knew he was in a bit of a mood, which isn't out of the usual for Fanini, let's be real. But I'm not sure. Not happy about being scheduled on an outside court. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what was said. I don't know if he was given a violation or anything. But if you can fill me in, then maybe I can give an opinion on that. I don't know. I thought I'd been keeping across the board. Well, I've had 3 matches on the go at once every single day, but clearly not. So clearly I'm not as on top as I thought. It will be interesting to see what Carla Suarez-Navarro and Ashley Barty can do against Serena, with their better defence and variety in contrast to Julia Gerges' style, which was more of a serving battle. True, Gerges has a big first serve. Obviously, she's got form on grass. She went to the final in Birmingham a couple of weeks ago. But it's true, she does have less variety than a Suarez-Navarro or Barty would have. Suarez-Navarro, she's not your first pick to do well on grass, especially giving Serena's better performance against Gerges. I wouldn't be picking Suarez-Navarro to beat her if it came to a clash between Suarez-Navarro and Serena. But, you know, Barty's been so efficient so far that I'd be taking Barty over Suarez-Navarro. I've said before, you know, she played a 3rd round today. It was against Harriet Dart, which wasn't as big of a challenge as it could be. I have to say credit to Dart. You know, she hit a big return on the first point of the match to try and assert herself. She was striking deep and at times, you know, going toe-to-toe from the baseline. But as I said before, you know, the one thing you know is going to come against Ash Barty is that backhand slice. She's been learning it from the age of 6. It's lethal. It marks her out. And Dart couldn't deal with it. And I think what was most impressive to me about Barty in that match was just how efficient she was. She's so focused, she's so on top of things, and so strategically brilliant. You know, she has so much in her repertoire, and that can be confusing for a player because they don't know what to use when, but she picks her absolutely right moments to bring things out of the bag. She works her opponents around the court. She's not all about finishing with a 1-2 punch. She can exhaust them a bit, kind of get inside their heads a bit with the way she's playing. And that just really marks Barty out to me, has for a while. And, you know, this is why she's now at number 1, because she's so focused and because she has these bags of variety. She's played 3 matches so far, hasn't dropped a set, was pushed a bit unexpectedly at the beginning of her first match. But, you know, at the moment, Barty is the player to beat. Credit to her. She's got herself to that position with Serena Williams in the draw, with Petra Kvitova in the draw, who are my other 2 kind of leading contenders for this tournament. She is the woman to take down. She's on a winning streak across 2 completely contrasting surfaces. And the question was, well, the statement was, it will be interesting to see what these 2 can do against Serena. It will be interesting, you know. Barty took Serena to 3 sets at the French Open last year when she was not close to the ranking she's at now. You know, now she has the mental strength has built. You know, she's come through these matches such as the heartbreaking loss to Svitolina, I think it was in either Indian Wells or Miami, marathon match, and Barty came out the loser, but she only came out, worked hard, and got stronger from it. And I think that Barty would be a player to really put the pressure on Serena. It might be what Serena needs to step out and really take a game and have fight up a notch, you know, and get the win there. But I would definitely be looking at a Barty versus Serena match being more challenging and more interesting than Serena versus Suarez-Navarro. So let me know if you have a differing opinion there. Oh boy. Simona Halep or Coco Gauff. This is where I talk. This is where it comes out. Okay, so I need to talk a bit about Gauff, Coco Gauff. Not that people haven't been talking about her already, because they have. I tweeted yesterday, and I'm going to read out the tweet that I tweeted, for those of you that did not see it. I tweeted, if I hear someone mention Cori Gauff's age one more time, I may scream. Strip away her age and she's 5'9", she's athletic, she's inspired, she's got a crazily strong support network around her, she's focused, and she has a well-developed game. Of course she should be good. I didn't think there was anything particularly controversial about that. I was just sick of hearing every time her name was mentioned, 15, exclamation mark, etc., etc. The 15-year-old, it's like her name couldn't be uncoupled from that number. When I said this in a previous video, when I'm looking at a player, I'm not necessarily thinking about how old they are, I'm just comparing them to the next player, how they measure up physically, how they measure up mentally. age doesn't really come into it. And it was just starting to bug me that she was being defined as an age and nothing else. She's a player in her own right. And to an extent, I understand why it's really impressive that this 15-year-old kid, essentially, is coming through, beating these experienced veteran players and making a Grand Slam fourth round. We don't see that. So fair play, that is really impressive. And I don't want to take away from that. It is impressive. Most impressive, I would say, in the way she's been able to compose herself and the mentality she has. But it goes to an extent, and it's like, what else can be said? We can all sit there and say, oh, wow, it's amazing. But I'm not there to just applaud. I'm an analyst, I'm a journalist. I've got to break this down, and I've got to be honest and say, actually, is she just phenomenal? Because people are it's a feel-good story, I get it, but this is part of the problem with Wimbledon, because so many of the people that are following Wimbledon, particularly in the UK, which has been so annoying, I think, over so many years, they don't know tennis in depth. They don't know about the physical aspects of the game. They don't know the technical stuff. So understandably, they're there for a good story. So all that's coming out of this is she's 15, she's made a Grand Slam fourth round, she can do no wrong. There's kind of this, no one's going into the technical details. So I'm trying to analyze her as a player, and because I'm not just sat there waving my flag and cheering her on, that's somehow seen as controversial or negative. I just try to be realistic, and I'm looking at this girl being realistic. Funnily enough, I've probably been impressed by this girl for years longer than most people talking about her now have even known about her. I've been following her progress, not necessarily watching, but results-wise from a distance for a year or so. Obviously, she made her junior Grand Slam final debut at the age of 13. That's massive. Of course, you're going to take notice of someone that does that. So I have been following her. I was impressed with her deeply last year when I watched a documentary on YouTube and saw this support network around her that was clearly modeled on that of the Williamses. Such a strong family network and other big names, trying to pull in, help her, develop her mentally, physically. It's great. But there comes a point where you can't just sit there and clap and say, well done anymore. You need to look deeper. And yeah, it's a great story that she's made the fourth round, but honestly, has her game been that impressive? She's far from the most developed player in the draw at the present time. It's clear that she's going places, it's clear that she's got potential, and it's clear that she's got the right people around her, but people are taking her age and blowing things out of all proportion. First round, Venus Williams. That's what got things going. I mean, I was impressed mostly by her final round win in qualifying on the courts of Roehampton, away from the crowds. Beat Greet Minnen, another player that I've been following on the ITF circuit for a while. She's 21, good backhand, real consistency from the baseline, can mix it up. She beat her 6-1, 6-1. That's when you knew that she was a serious one, a serious presence coming into this draw, and that's when I knew, when she was drawn against Venus Williams, that she was probably going to walk away with the win, because Venus not in form. And from the moment Venus stepped out on that centre court, played the first game, second game, looked flat, looked out of things, there was only one winner in that match. All the pressure was on a certain side of the net. So brilliant mentally from Cori Gauff to come through that match. But did Venus offer the most resistance? No. That was far from the best match I've ever seen Venus play. Move on to Magdalena Rybarikova. Now that's a great win, because Rybarikova, I've said this before, I know I'm repeating myself, but she throws in so much variety. There's so much to deal with when you're up against her. She's just come off the biggest win of her career, so it shows again the composure of Gauff to be able to deal with that, come through in straight sets. Third round victory should not have been a victory. Yeah, everyone thinks it's marvelous because she saved match points and came through in 3 sets. The standard of that match was not good from what I saw. You probably saw, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll have seen that I was not impressed, and neither was Fabio Fognini, obviously, that match had been scheduled on centre court, because, generally you have at least one seeded player in a match on centre court. Neither Gauff nor Herzog was seeded, so to me that was unfair, particularly on Herzog, because they're being put on a centre court stage, big stage, because of the hype surrounding one young player. And obviously, if the match gets close, as it did, all the crowd is going to rally around the young girl. incredible scenes on the hill, trying to push this girl through. You don't even have that reaction for a British player generally. It's crazy, really, the heights that it's reached. And Herzog had her, she was a set and a break up. I think she was 4-1 up, then 5-2 up in the second set. And Herzog, experienced player, 6 foot, good slice, tall player, good reach, not the best mover, but I mean, there's a reason she's ranked world number 60, not world number 6. But she had that match and she choked. She double faulted on match point, which is a giveaway. There's no leaning away from the fact. Gauff was making so many unforced errors. And people were saying again, the mentality that she showed to come through. Well, yeah, to an extent, but you don't need really to have a strong mentality when your opponent's double faulting on match point. I think that's fair to say. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's a fair comment. In the final set, she's serving first, which means that at the back end of the set, it's Polona Herzog who's holding serve to stay in the match. That's all the pressure on her shoulders. And Herzog, she just, I don't know if she was injured and this was all she could do, but it was just slice, slice, slice again and again. She didn't really try much else. And Gauff herself, was slicing off the slice. It just wasn't a good quality match. And I understand why people were taken up with the drama of it, but to pretend that that was the usual quality of a Grand Slam third round match is just wrong. I mean, I could go on, but to anyone that knows their tennis, Gauff hit nearly double the amount of unforced errors that she hit winners. That was a match where she got off lightly. She should be out, but she's not. She lives to fight on, so credit to her. But it was on Herzog's racket, is what I'm saying, which leads me on to the actual question that was asked of Halep or Gauff. Now, based on what I've just said, Gauff, bags of potential. I see her being world number 1, 100%. I can see her up there. I can see her being multiple-time Grand Slam champion. What impressed me most about her when I first saw her was her vocalness about the fact that she wants to be better than Serena Williams, that ambition, that she has the confidence, to be honest. But at the same time, she hadn't had to play her best tennis, I don't think, in the first round. Not so sure about the second round. Third round certainly didn't play her best tennis. And then there are double faults and stuff in key moments that she hasn't been penalized for. It's the players that she's up against that are getting cagey. Now, here's something else that I wanted to mention. People are using her age, she's 15, as kind of why it's so surprising or shocking that she's doing so well. Actually, I said this on the radio this morning. I remember being 15 very vividly. It wasn't all that long ago, and I didn't want to grow up. I just wanted to stay young, because at 15 years old, I felt like I could be anything and do anything that I wanted to do, be anything that I wanted to be. And as you get on, you can kind of forget, I guess, that liberty you feel at a young age, the imagination that you have at that age, and the lack of fear that you have. There's a certain fearlessness that you have at that age that the likes of Polona Herzog isn't going to have, because she's lost so many matches from winning positions, because she's faced so many big names. Cori Gauff is right at the start of her Grand Slam career. So it's not like this is a seasoned pro who's been through highs and lows and is therefore keeping mental strength to come through these big matches. She's never experienced it before, so it's all a win-win situation for her. She goes out and she's got everything to gain. And the player on the other side of the net, the more the tournament goes on, they're looking at a winnable draw and they've got everything to lose. So I think there's an element of her age actually being an advantage. And come at me, come and give me a different opinion if you have one. But I genuinely feel that, remembering how I felt at 15, seeing how she is on the court, there is that element of absolute fearlessness that comes from not having been through the highs and lows that a seasoned pro like Venus Williams, like Polona Herzog, like Magdalena Rybarikova has been through. So she does have her chances against Simona Halep, because it is Halep that faces the possibility of completely tightening up. When we look at Halep, she had a good win over Victoria Azarenka in the last round. Azarenka, though, I could feel once the match got going, from the outset it was a little bit hard to predict. When the match got going, you could just feel it. For poor Azarenka, who herself has been through so much, she will put together 1 or 2 really good performances and then it will just go to pot in the next match. And she did not play her best quality match. Halep stepped up and took advantage of that. And it was good for Halep, because from what I saw of her first 2 rounds, she was not all that impressive. Now, the big thing for Simona Halep here, she's a counter puncher, and it's been kind of the slice and the slow play that Gauff has been taking advantage of at times, using it to move in so far this tournament. But the big thing with Halep is her serve. She struggles to have real potency on that first serve. She struggles to land that first serve. And if she's struggling to land that first serve against Gauff, that opens the way for nerves and mental struggles, and that could be a real issue. So Gauff, is talented, and she's got more than a nation. She's got so many people backing her that, I wouldn't put another win and more wins past this girl. At the end of the day, hands down, it should be Halep winning this match. She's the better player. At the time being, she is the better player. And with all she's come through, Halep, I mean, look at what Gauff was let off with against Herzog and against Venus at times as well. Halep should be winning this match, but what I'm saying is, with the hype that surrounded Gauff, and with the people backing her, with everyone in her corner, and with the belief that she herself is gaining through coming through these matches, I see clear chances for her. But at the end of the day, if Halep brings her A game, Halep's going through probably in straight sets. That's the deal. So a long answer to that question, but only because I wanted to kind of flesh out my thoughts on Gauff. I didn't want to come across as just being negative for the sake of being negative. There is so much positive out there that I just wanted to bring a bit of realism to the story and just kind of balance it out a bit. I don't want to take anything away from this girl. She's had potential for a long time, and hopefully if she's protected and surrounded by the right people, she will continue to progress. But it's all been made too much too soon. I mean, the biggest example of this is something I only found out a few hours ago, which is some of you may remember, especially if you're in the UK, that Harriet Dart and Jay Clark, two British players teamed up for the mixed doubles last year, had a surprise good run. They made the semi-finals. They were due to play together again this year, but at last minute, Clark sent a text to Harriet Dart. I felt so much for her on this, to say that he was pulling out of the partnership because he decided to play with Cori Gauff. I don't know how you excuse that. His way of trying to excuse it was to say, I tried to think of it in the way as if Roger Federer had offered to play with Dart, then she wouldn't have turned that down. But hang on a minute. It's 15-year-old Cori Gauff. It's not 20-time major champion Roger Federer. The very fact that he's trying to put those two on the same pedestal just shows how far this hype has gone. I mean, there is no defending saying you're going to play an event with someone, backing out on them via text at the last minute and not leaving them enough time to find a partner to play their home Grand Slam. I mean, you just can't defend that. And I think that just kind of shows how this hype and this exaggeration is spiraling out of control. So in a way, it might even be good for Gauff, if she doesn't go much further in this event. But at the same time, she's riding a wave of confidence, and that's as lethal as any forehand or backhand at the end of the day. So moving on from that, because I spent a long time on that, but we shall move on, and the questions are pouring in, so thank you very much. What are your thoughts and predictions on the Kvitova versus Konta match? Good question. There were times today when Johanna Konta was in real trouble against Sloane Stephens, who is a player she'd already beaten 3 times this year. In a way, these two are quite similar players, Stephens and Konta. They have a solid baseline game off both wings. I would say Stephens is probably more athletic at the best of times, but she's also prone to more errors, I think, as well. And Konta was able to have the upper hand in terms of consistency in the end, get out to that crucial lead in the final set and ultimately put the win in the bag. I can make a clear prediction on this one for once, because I'm picking Kvitova, plainly because I've had her as a contender for the title from the outset of the tournament. And just looking at the matches Kvitova's come through, I mean, I don't really have to pull up the page, but I will just to make sure I'm getting scores right. But she opened against Ons Jabeur in the first round, who's been having some good results on grass and actually beat Konta a couple of weeks ago. Kvitova handled that in straight sets, 6-4, 6-2. Then she was against Kristina Mladenovic. Mladenovic not in the form that's taken her to heights, really, but Kvitova, you know, still up against an opponent there who rises against the big players and who still has the confidence in her ability at the end of the day. And Kvitova was down in that first set, still was able to come through, come out on the upper hand of some baseline exchanges, get the 1-2 punches in, and rip that lefty forehand. It's so lethal on the surface, and Kvitova's been maximizing its potential. And then a win over Magda Linette in straight sets. And a couple of months ago, that wouldn't have been so impressive to me, but Linette has really been stepping up in recent times. Pushed Simona Halep at the French Open, is getting more confident, ripping her own cross-court forehand pretty well. And Kvitova kind of just staying in control and really dictating things there to win in straights. So, I mean, Konta can beat Kvitova, but Kvitova is all round the more sharp and lethal player. Konta's best bet is to be ultra consistent, to play with an attacking mindset, yes, but even maybe trial out making Kvitova hit the extra balls. It's a dangerous tactic, but she can change it up if it's not working. Just see if she can kind of frustrate her into some errors and get inside her head a bit. But I would say that Kvitova is the player to be coming through that, and I'm not going to put a lid on where Kvitova can get to in this tournament, because I do believe she's one of the players in better form, with a better mindset, and can definitely go far here, if not all the way to the title, I think. This question always comes up. Who retires with the more Grand Slam titles, Nadal or Federer? And to follow that up, does Federer have another Grand Slam title in him before he retires? I mean, I will answer this question. I did say Wimbledon third round Q&A, but I mean, this is kind of related because Wimbledon, but I answered a similar question in the last live, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 100%. You know, when Federer took 4.5 years to win his 18th Grand Slam title, I was consistently predicting him. Apart from one crazy Wimbledon, when I predicted Andy Murray and Serena Williams to win the championships, and they both did, 2016. That must be one of my proudest calls for tournament champions. Apart from 2016, every year I've picked Federer, and this year as well, because I'm leaning Djokovic actually, but I've generally always picked Federer to win Wimbledon because I've had that much faith that on this surface he can unlock his potential. And it is for Federer at the Grand Slams now. I'd say it's more of a mental thing than a physical thing when he comes to the back end of a Grand Slam and he's struggling. So does Federer have another Grand Slam in him before he retires? Yeah. I mean, he's in good physical shape. I see him playing into his 40s. And to an extent, with all of these guys at the top, it does depend on opposition as well and how they're playing at certain times. If he's healthy and he's sticking around, there is time for the likes of Djokovic to go on another wander, for Nadal to get another injury, and for things to open up for him, as they did when he came back at the end of 2016 and was rejuvenated and really raring to go, mentally sound, and taking advantage of, yeah, open draws to an extent, but really a relaxed mindset. So yeah, 100% I can see Federer having another Grand Slam title in him. I can't say on number of Grand Slam titles people end with, because as I say, it depends on injuries, it depends on mentality, it depends on how long they keep playing. But what I always say is that I'm always picking Nadal for the French Open. And if Nadal wins 3-4 more French Opens and Federer retires or Djokovic goes on a wander, that's putting him out in front on French Opens alone. That's just winning one each year is enough to just keep him drawing closer. And if Federer doesn't win more, eventually overtaking. So you have to bear these kind of things in mind, looking at the tournaments where players tend to excel when it comes to trying to predict these unpredictable things. So that's my on that one. What else do we have? Fanini wasn't happy with being put on court 14. Okay, so that's the bit I gathered. So went on a rant mid-match saying a bomb should explode on the club. Apparently there would be action taken. I would think so. I mean, you don't say stuff like that, especially in this day and age when bombs are going off left, right, and centre. Yeah, I mean, action does need to be taken on. I get, you know, when a player's in a high-pressure situation, they're not doing well, they're not happy. In a way, I can't judge because I've not been in that situation, but I know for a fact that if I was in that situation, I wouldn't be talking about bombs going off, you know? So I can appreciate, at the end of the day, I can appreciate that he was not happy being scheduled on that court, because if I was seeded and I'd seen two non-seeders placed on the highest court the day before, I wouldn't have been too happy either, to be honest with you. I mean, Wimbledon have some questions to answer. I mean, even though it was a dramatic match yesterday, but it was going to be, two lower ranked players obviously are going to they're going to have a close match, whether it's quality or not. So there's no defending that. And yeah, I can see why he's unhappy. I sympathize. But at the end of the day, you are totally in control of what comes out of your mouth. Goes without saying that shouldn't have happened. So yeah, I would be surprised if he's not penalised for that. So excited that Laver Cup is now a part of the ATP. Roger Federer just has a way, doesn't he? I mean, when Laver Cup was first announced, I hated the idea of it. In fact, I've done a whole video on the Laver Cup. If you're interested, when I've finished here, watch the rest of the video if you're not sick of me rambling. Go back to videos from around September, October time last year on my channel. I did a whole analysis video on the Laver Cup because the year before, I'd hated the idea of it. I really had. I thought you had Hopman Cup. Okay, that's a bit of difference. It's enough. And then Federer comes with this newfangled tournament that takes away from the rest of the tour, and I'm like, here we go again. We don't need this. But actually, he managed to make something really unique, something that a lot of the top players were getting on board with and backing. And I just thought, if there's that much attention and energy being put into it by so many different people, then should give it a chance, And it's pretty good, actually, I think, that the ATP have got on board with it. It doesn't make sense that the ATP is still planning on running their ATP Cup at the beginning of the year, which is essentially a similar tournament, a mix of Laver Cup and Davis Cup and just another team event in what should be an individual sport at the end of the day. But, yeah, I think there are definitely benefits to it being part of the ATP. It feels now, it was in this awkward situation where players were taking it really seriously, but it didn't have like proper prize money. It didn't have ranking points, and so it was just kind of an overrated exhibition. And the players that were participating wanted it to have more prestige than that. Well, now it does, so they're happy. So all good things, I guess I would say. Was Tsonga poor or Nadal too good? This is a really good question, actually. I thought, personally, I mean, I mentioned this a bit briefly at the beginning. I never like to write Tsonga off because I know what he's capable of. He's capable of tennis that's knocked off the big four multiple times each and at Grand Slams as well. So I didn't want to write him off, but, he's so close to having come back from injuries and having struggled. And, he didn't win his first two rounds quite as easily as he could have done. Nadal had faced Nick Kyrgios, who'd really got under his skin, who'd fired him up, and who'd forced out of him some outstanding tennis. And I just thought Nadal was so primed for this match, and Tsonga, in a way, maybe it came too soon for him. At the same time, Tsonga came out and I thought he had a really good mindset and attitude about the match. He was coming out and he was moving to the net. He was taking it to Nadal, taking the game to him, which I thought was impressive. When he was at the baseline, he was hitting to the spaces. The two of them were dragging each other around side to side, up the lines, moving each other to the net. And I thought that there were some really good rallies. And at the beginning of the match, it was really good quality. But, Nadal edged it in that first set against the likes of Nadal. Federer, Djokovic is so important for the underdog's mentality. And Tsonga was the underdog today, however talented he is. And I thought after that first set, there was a dip in form from Tsonga. The second set was closer, actually, by way of score. I believe the score was 6-2, 6-3, 6-2. But Tsonga missing too many first serves, Nadal nailing that first serve. And I was saying earlier, the first serve for Nadal is one of the most improved aspects of his game. So much venom in it, and he's playing such an aggressive game these days, firing the 1-2 punches, really digging into the court with the forehand and the backhand, actually, even on the returning really deep with the backhand. He's just such an aggressive player now. It's saving him energy, it's saving him time, and it's really robbing his opponents of time and putting the pressure on them. And Tsonga, like many other players, just fell victim to that. He wasn't clinical enough. and that ultimately cost him. I said ahead of the match, if Tsonga was going to trouble Nadal, he needed to swing and he needed to do it with consistency. And he did go out there swinging and really backing himself. And to be fair, you know, committing to approaching that net with the serve and volleys, even when Nadal was passing him. But it just wasn't a clinical enough performance from Tsonga. So I wouldn't say poor from Tsonga. He definitely could have played a lot better. I wouldn't go as far as to say it was poor. I think that, you know, he came out, I was impressed with the strategy he brought to the table, but I just thought today Nadal was too good. He was pretty much clinical. He was far outweighing his unforced error count with winners in each set. And it's a very dangerous Nadal we have on our hands now. You know, if he was to come up against Federer, he's beaten Federer here before. He's pushed him close before just because Federer's better on grass. I wouldn't be writing off Nadal, especially given that, you know, the grass is longer, it's a slower court and surface to usual. So it's really, really interesting stuff here. I'm a bit disappointed that the match wasn't closer because it had potential, but, you know, Kyrgios really worked Nadal into a Nadal that we've never seen before. He was fired up with emotion in that match and so focused and so ready. He's kind of been primed for the rest of the tournament now. And I feel for Tsonga that he had to play Nadal after Nadal had beaten Kyrgios, because if he'd been playing Nadal in the second round as opposed to the third round, it could have been a little bit different. I heard Victoria Azarenka is pushing for paid maternity leave in tennis. I don't get how that would work. I don't get how that would work either, because, you know, you only get paid if you win matches, right? So even if someone's on tour 24/7 and they're not winning matches, they're not getting paid. So I don't fully understand how that would work. You know, at the end of the day, if someone's having a baby, you know, that is their choice and they've chosen that. It's difficult, I know. But no, I don't see how that would work, because the way you earn money in tennis is by winning matches, or at least playing matches, you know. So yeah, not sure how that one would work. I'm confused. Okay. And it won't play tennis. I play tennis badly, you know, not as well as I could, but I give it a go. Were you surprised by Kiki Bertens' loss to Barbara Strycova? I've got to admit here, I wasn't paying Bertens enough attention to be surprised. And I feel really bad about that, you know, because Bertens is another player almost like Barty, except to a lesser scale, that's built herself up kind of quietly in a focused manner, very happy with being under the radar, doesn't really want all the glitz and glamour and attention that comes with being a top player. I saw quite a good lead into an article, and it was saying, you know, Bertens is the world number 4, but she could walk through Wimbledon grounds. Hardly anyone would know who she is, and she's quite happy with that. I like that about players, you know, when they're so content with what they're doing and so content in their own skin, and they just don't care about status. They're just happy to be them. But I feel bad, you know, with everything else that's gone on. I wasn't really paying Bertens attention, and just because she's such a good clay courter as well, I know she's worked hard to transfer her form to other surfaces, but I wasn't counting her as a real Wimbledon contender. Strycova, on the other hand, I don't really count her as a massive force to go deep either. But, you know, she did go to the semi-finals in Birmingham a couple of weeks ago. You know, she's done well on grass before, and she's a renowned giant slayer. So if you're looking at that draw with Bertens against Strycova, it would take a lot to be really surprised, I think, by that result. I think it was in straight sets, so, you know, Bertens did go down in fairly straightforward fashion, but at the same time, I don't think that was the first time Bertens had been pushed this tournament. I'm correct. She nearly went out to Taylor Townsend, the American, in round 2. I think she might even have saved match point to come through that, winning the second set tiebreak and then winning in 3. But yeah, went down for the loss of 6 games to Strycova, 7-5, 6-1. And yeah, I have to be honest, I wasn't surprised by that one, I'm afraid. Do you watch cricket? I'm asking because Cricket World Cup is going on currently in England and Wales. Good question, I don't mind you asking that. No, so lots of talk about cricket at the moment. My older brother's a cricket fan, talking about the cricket. You know, everyone's into it. It's great, you know, when a sport that's kind of below the likes of football and that gets its moment in the spotlight. And actually, when I was working in Nottingham, I believe that one of the World Cup games was happening right next door. So there was Nottingham Tennis Centre and then the Nottingham Cricket Place right next door. And so both were hit by rain because it was torrential. But no, don't watch cricket. The way I follow tennis, 3 screens at a time, it just absorbs so much of my time and my life that following any other sport in depth is almost impossible. So no, I don't follow cricket. Thank you for the nice comments. All big servers are struggling due to lack of free points on first serve. Yes, they are. The grass is too slow. Tsonga had no chance against Nadal, and so won't Federer. Oh, interesting to write Federer off against Nadal. Even though Federer wasn't a comprehensive win for him today, and he did struggle at times, did shank a few backhands. I mean, it's not Federer matched without them. I thought he did all right. Luca Pouille is a player that's knocked off Nadal at Grand Slam. He's streaky, so it kind of takes away from how dangerous he could be. And he was serving and coming to the net and opening up the court and really asking Federer questions, but Federer won the big points, as he so often does. Even when he wasn't able to convert match point on the return and went to a third set tiebreak, he seemed quite relaxed, considering that he lost a match from 2 sets and match point at the back end of the third set up last year, which was, of course, to Anderson, if that made sense, because that was a long sentence. So I wouldn't say Tsonga had no chance against Nadal, but I think Nadal was quite a clear favourite going into that one, despite the excitement of the matchup. And I think it is, we've seen big servers crash out. Marin Cilic, Kevin Anderson. Sam Querrey's doing all right. Milos Raonic as well. Keep an eye on them and see if it has an effect. But so far, it is proving that, it's a slower surface and there can be upsets for the big hitters, which isn't as usual on grass. Do you think Andy Murray and Serena Williams will win mixed doubles? When I'm on the radio, because I'm in the UK, all the questions they kind of have the favourite questions. Is Nick Kyrgios good for tennis? Will Andy Murray return to singles? I've been saying yes since January. And then will Murray win doubles? I actually gave Murray and Herbert a really good shot at winning the doubles, which they didn't. I can't say whether I think they will. I mean, I've seen a set of them literally just now, and that's all I've ever seen of them play together. They definitely have the star power. I mean, the big thing in tennis, and a lot of the time this is the case with big names in singles as well as doubles, when you're up against a big player, you first have to beat them, and then you have to beat their status, their name, their kind of aura as well. And you have 2 big names on one side of the court together, Murray and Serena, and it doesn't matter even whether they've played doubles before together. It doesn't matter how good they are on a doubles court. It's still 2 monumental names on the same side of a court, great talent, and that's going to be in their opponents' heads. I saw the first game today, and the guy on the other team, I think, double faulted the second time he had to serve to Serena, just because, 2 massive presences on that side of the court. So that helps them for sure. I can't say that I think they will win, but they have chances, like anyone has chances. It seems that the big 3, this is not me talking, I'm reading a comment. It seems that the big 3 will make it to the last 4 again. They are the most consistent players in tennis history, true. Grass requires a good serve technique returning. It's harder for the next gen. The thing is, what I would say is hard for the next gen, the game is so much more physical than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago. It's constantly progressing. And that's the big thing for the next gen, because they're not fully developed yet. They're still going, they're still building. So everything is that much harder for them in that respect at the end of the day. Nadal seems so dangerous, changed totally from his former defensive approach to being as offensive as possible. Very good observation. It's true. He is going for it. And he didn't used to have to, because he was so good at turning things around and still is so good at turning things around from the back foot. Running way behind the baseline gives him the time he needs to get all the spin and depth he wants to on his forehand. And he's probably the most lethal player on the back foot out there. But, it's saving him so much strain on his joints and so much time and energy, to come and be this more aggressive player and impose himself as well and really get inside his opponent's heads and that kind of thing. That gives him weapons. I put him close to Djokovic as the favourite at Wimbledon. That's not a bad call, actually, not a bad shout. It would be interesting to see what would happen if Nadal and Federer faced off. I repeat. I'm not even answering that one, sorry. What would happen if you put Nadal on the women's draw? You'd crush everyone, obviously. Still disappointing that Garbine Muguruza crashed out in first round. Wanted to see how she could have done. Well, at the end of the day, you know, you've just got to win each match that comes. She couldn't do that. And if she couldn't get past the first round, you know, who's to say she could have done any better further in the draw? So disappointing form from Muguruza, but, you know, I still think, you know, she's monumentally talented, and she's won multiple slams for a reason. She's still won more slams than other players who are more developed now had at her age, and still chances for her. I'd like to see an exhibition match or maybe a mixed doubles pairing between Riley Opelka and Lauren Davis. Just think of the height difference. Yeah. Massive height difference. Gonna wrap it up, guys, because it's coming up to an hour and I think I've answered all your questions. If I haven't answered all of them, just let me know and I'll catch up on some of the ones that I've missed in the next video, because I think what we'll do is I'm not sure. Sometimes I do a fourth round Q&A, and sometimes I just make the fourth round Q&A video a quarterfinals preview, because when I'm previewing the upcoming matches, it answers a lot of the questions anyway. So if you have a preference as to what I do, don't leave a comment in the chat now because I'm rounding off. But if you leave a comment on the video when it's processed and is on my channel after this is finished, let me know if you have a preference on that, and I can try and please you, I guess. But thank you for joining. I know that I rambled on several things, but I mean, hopefully you understand my viewpoint and my stance a bit more on stuff like the Coco Gauff story. You know, we could see her going further, and it will be interesting to see the effects that the hype has, whether for better or for worse. Spoke quite a bit about Nadal as well and how he's developing. It's an interesting story, you know, and I think it's still underrated how well Nadal, the clay courter, has been able to compete on grass. He's still underrated, I think, on this surface, just because people see him as the king of clay. But you know, he's doing big stuff. So I'm going to halt there. Thank you for watching. Hope it was worth your time, and hopefully next time will be worth your time, and I will see you again soon.